For the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is the air conditioning on in here?
Yes.
Just
Lower
on.
I just put it on.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Leslie, I'll let you make the
Sure.
introduction, please.
Well, I'm so delighted. We have Jillian Matthews with us here this evening. Jillian works with the Cornell Cooperative and has been working with the Climate Smart Communities Task Force, but specifically Margaret Schneibel, Richard Phillips, and I, in going through all of the state's various initiatives and coming up with sort of suggested recommendations for our communities of how we can go about earning points for our certification. But Jillian's here to walk us through the process, what Cornell does and how they work with communities and the work that she's done with us so far. So Jillian, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you want to stand or you can sit? Either.
Oh, that's okay. I can stand. We'll wait for the slideshow to go
No,
up.
just have to.
Okay.
And this is Pete from Video Ventures. Thank God he's here.
Fantastic.
We would not be able to do this without him. I know. It's
You're on.
We're just going to wait for it to go into.
While we're loading, I should just mention we have some Climate Smart Communities Task Force members here, Adelaide Camillo, and I saw Colleen Howland. Oh, there you are, Colleen. And then we have CAC members, Nan and David Greenwood, and Howard, and well, Richard we mentioned earlier, who's been so instrumental in this work. So,
All right. Well, thank you everyone for having me. I really appreciate it and giving me the time to speak about this incredible project that we've been working on with the town of Washington. So if you haven't heard of the Climate Smart Communities program, we'll go through it a little bit more and just make sure that everyone has a good foundation for what the project is built off of and then how much work they've been doing and where we're at in terms of certification for the program. So next slide. All right, so like I mentioned, quick agenda, we're going to review what the Hudson River Estuary Watershed Resiliency Project is, because that is the project that gives us funding for this, and it's just important to understand its connection to the DEC. And then we'll go over Climate Smart Communities and all the benefits of the program, and then the results and recommendations. Next slide. Okay, so the Hudson River Estuary Program is a project that's built between Cornell Cooperative Extension, which is the land-grant university for New York State. So we do a lot of extension services throughout every single county in New York State pretty much. So we've partnered with the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program, which supports all of the communities that are located within the Hudson River Estuary. The New York Water Resources Institute, which is also through Cornell University, and then the New York State Environmental Protection Fund. Next slide. All right, and so we do a bunch of different projects with communities. The one we're talking about today is the Climate Smart Community Certification, Assessment, and Submission. But we also do a few different projects, such as the Resilient Policy Analysis Tool, which is actually something I'm going to be working on again with you guys in a month or so. So fun fact. And we're also going to be going through some of the policies and procedures that the town has to kind of test how it is in terms of emergency preparedness, but also just to see where the town is at in terms of resiliency. Some other projects we work on are Pledge Element 9, which is climate change education and outreach, and then some social media revamping for communities, and just assisting communities with incorporating resilience techniques and procedures into their comprehensive plan updates. Next slide. All right, so the Climate Smart Communities program, like I mentioned, is through the Department of Environmental Conservation. Feel free to visit this website if you want to learn more in depth what the program is and what other communities are doing and what progress they're making. But there's been a ton of communities since 2014, especially. We've seen a big rise in communities getting involved in this program, mainly because there's a lot of incentives, but it also just helps build a very sustainable foundation for communities to move forward with. Next slide. All right, so this map up here is pretty much every community that has shown any type of involvement in the Climate Smart Communities program. So anything that you see that's blue is a community that has only registered at this point. Anything that is that bronze color, which is kind of hard to see now that I'm looking at it. So they've become bronze certified. So, and this is what the town of Washington is going for. It's the first level in terms of certification. You have to earn a significant amount of points and put a lot of work into the program in order to get bronze certification. And then the rest is silver certified. And they're actually creating another one, which is the Evergreen certification, which is kind of the certification for communities who've already done so much work and there's not much left for them. So they created a new level. But there's over 390 total registered communities. I think this information's out of date by like a month or so. So there's probably a few more that have registered since then. And then 118 currently certified. And that will increase within the next few months because the last certification recently passed for the DEC. So they're currently reviewing everyone's applications and there'll be a big spike in that number. And then actions completed is over 3,800 as well.
Julie, in terms of our neighboring communities, Uniondale is bronze certified, Dover is bronze certified, any others that are
Off the top of my head, I can't remember,
Okay.
to be honest. But we can always like zoom in on that map at any time and kind of show. But I will say the Hudson Valley is really ahead of the rest of the state, as you can see, in terms of climate smart communities. Most of the surrounding communities are involved in it.
Is there any silver certified?
Yep, the
Okay.
Kingston, Poughkeepsie, like a lot of the cities go for silver certification because they already have the capacity to do so. So they've been in the program for a while now, but it's, as you start to work through it, it's easier to get the silver once you've already secured the points for bronze. And, all right, next slide. Okay. So like I mentioned, those are the levels. I can't really see my notes at this point, but registered is basically you just sign up for the program and show that you have intent to become involved in it. Bronze certification is what we'll talk about a little bit more, but you have to have at least 120 points for the certification through 4 different pledge elements. There's 12 pledge elements and I think 3 priority actions for that. And silver, I cannot remember off the top of my head. I apologize. So we'll move on from that because the text is a little too small there. Next slide. So these are all of the pledge elements in the program. They all have completely different action types within them. And as you'll see, if you ever look on the website or if you want to look through that report a little bit more, which I apologize did get cut off a bit, but there's over 300 actions in the program. So each pledge element has quite a few within them. And I'm not going to go through all of them, but the ones that really stand out, I think, for most communities is pledge element 2, which is inventory, emissions, and setting goals and planning for climate action. Pledge element 6, which is implementing climate smart land use. And pledge element 7, which is enhancing community resilience to climate change. Those ones are typically the actions that have a lot of points, but they're also easier for communities that don't have a huge population. And it makes them a little more, actions that just work for smaller communities. And you can move on to the next one. Next slide. Okay. Some of the benefits of the program is just straight up technical assistance. Someone like me, I'm a technical assistance provider, is offering you opportunities to move forward with the program for free. And oftentimes we can help you putting together your submission. We can help you with completing different pledge elements, like I mentioned before. The Hudson Valley Regional Council also does a lot of work with greenhouse gas inventories and climate action plans. They're doing an entire cohort through Dutchess County right now. So it's definitely something to get involved in. It's, free education for people who want to learn more about these programs and want to help their communities. And networking, so you're also getting involved with your, surrounding communities, but other like-minded individuals and community leaders who feel passionate about the same things. Leadership recognition, so you get state level attention for local leaders. Oftentimes the DEC will come down and announce when you get your bronze certification. They also give you this huge banner, which the town of Saugerties in Ulster County has put up right on their town hall. So feel free to do that if you get your bronze certification. And I think it's just a good opportunity to also meet a lot of people from the DEC as well. And funding opportunities, which I think is the most important. So being able to find your way through the program with financial assistance is really important. Oftentimes, communities have task force and CACs that are mainly made up of volunteers. They just don't have the capacity to be doing full-time work for this program. So having a grant opportunities really helps to incentivize a lot of those actions. Next slide. So the process that we went through together this year was quite extensive. It pretty much involved us going through every single action in the program, reading through every single description of the action, finding what submission requirements were, and looking through what other communities did as well to make sure that that's something that could be fulfilled by the town of Washington. And we'll go to the spreadsheet in the next slide, but just for the quick snippet of the process, the first thing we did was just introduce the project, obviously, and make sure that everyone understood, what type of time you were going to need moving forward. We had pretty frequent meetings, at least every 2 weeks. We had hour to 2 hour meetings going on. A lot of time was dedicated to this project, going through every pledge element and then making sure that all of the information was accurate. So I recently met with the CAC / task force to make sure that everything on there was ready for, finding documentation and making sure that that is clarified. And then right now, the presentation to the town. Next slide. So this is the tool that we've created. It's pretty expansive. This is just a screenshot of one tiny portion of it, but it scrolls down for a super long time. The entire tool has every single action that's been involved in the program, any updates that have ever happened, and then gives you an opportunity to visit the website for more information. But the general foundation for it is marking an action as either completed, in progress, recommended, or not recommended. Typically, actions that fall into the not recommended category are just due to capacity. Just because a lot of communities might not have the capacity at that point doesn't mean they can't take it on in the future. Just at the moment we're doing the assessment. Anything completed is something that still we for sure know has happened. It falls into the time frame for submission, but we just need to collect documentation. And then in progress is something that will be completed by the time that the town submits for bond certification. And the recommended column is split between 3 different time frames. So you have a 1 to 3 year time frame, a 3 to 5, and a 5 to 8, just to help communities kind of split up the workload. Like I mentioned, there's a lot of actions in this program, and oftentimes it can be overwhelming. So what we did was basically generate a timeline for the community to follow so that they can move forward with their certification.
I might give some examples of some of the things that we have done that we've gotten points for.
Sure.
For example, James Finley did a training, which is for building inspectors on sustainable buildings, and we got points for that. Richard, you did a training.
A lot of training, huh?
Yeah, remind me all the different trainings that you've done.
Well, the planning board, community, the New York State, training.
And I think you got 12 points. He gets
Yeah,
the gold star,
yeah.
Richard, for the most points.
So,
And our charging
I spent the day
stations
with it.
that Bob Audio is instrumental in having installed here at the town hall, working with the village, we have points for that once we submit the documentation. Our natural resource inventory that we're doing right now with the village in Clinton will give us a lot of points. So it's things like that. And there's examples here of the whole report of what of things that the town can consider, as we move forward. There's
I
a
think that NRI gives you something like 80 points. 80
Yeah.
points.
I think the NRI, it might not be 80, I think it's like 20 or something like that.
20. I remember that you said we would potentially have 80.
Yes, in the completed, you have around 70 to 80 points. So you've already completed a big bulk of this program for bronze certification. which we can talk about a little bit. I do apologize, like I mentioned, it is cut off, so any of the context for the actions is cut off at the moment, but everything is still there and what kind of points the town is looking at for it, and what year it'll likely be completed.
Also, in our case, I think some of the things that weren't applicable were things that just didn't apply to us because of our size. I think
Yeah,
that's why
it's
you
mostly
see
size.
Kingston and Poughkeepsie having the ability to get a silver certification because they're able to do things like purchasing green energy for the city, things that we just don't do because of our size. And,
Yep.
So.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. A lot of the community, like Buffalo, Rochester, those are really the cities that are doing those giant, large scale projects that just aren't, they don't apply to smaller communities, and that's totally fine. It doesn't take away from every other action you have completed. You can go to the next slide. So this is just a breakdown of what requirements I did find that the town has met. So the 2 mandatory actions that you've already completed, which is identifying a Climate Smart Communities coordinator and creating a Climate Smart Communities task force. In order to even apply for the program, those need to be done. And for the next one is just the points in general. So having at least 120 points. Right now they're at 114, and that's fine. It's only 6 points. They could do one more action and still, be over that threshold. But the completed points is around 70, and then the in progress is 44. So once they get all the required documentation and, tie up those loose ends for the in progress actions, they'll have 114. And I'm sure within the next year, they'll be taking on another action to go over 120. And then for the 3 priority actions that they've already met, we have alternative fuel infrastructure, which is the charging station, the natural resource inventory, which everyone is working very hard on right now to have completed by the end of 2023 or 2024, I assume. 2023, perfect. So, and then the last one is the evaluating policies for climate resilience, which is the tool that I will be working on with the town for the rest of the year. And that should be done by the end of 2023 as well. And then
I'm going to talk about what that means when you say climate resilience. And is that remind me because I know we talked about so many different things that Cornell offers. Would you remind us what that work is?
Yeah, and I'll be giving a presentation on that too in a few months, so come for that as well. But so that tool is basically, it looks a little bit similar to the assessment, but it goes through a bunch of different questions that the DEC has set forth that serve as a foundation for what climate resiliency means in terms of policy. So there's different parts to it. There's like an emergency preparedness and disaster recovery section to it. So making sure that the town is kind of up to date in those areas, and making sure, I know Dutchess County is updating the hazard mitigation plan pretty soon, but the town was very involved in that process. I've seen the application, so that information will all be in there as well. And just going through pretty much anything related to FEMA and floodplains, and just making sure all of that information is not only available, but also is still up to date. So at the end of the report, which I'll be formulating, will give you a bunch of recommendations on how to kind of improve your resiliency, and what type of projects you could take on and what type of grant funding you can go for in order to kind of fill in those gaps. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
You also mentioned that we could piggyback or we could share points with the village.
Yeah.
And there was some available to us.
Absolutely. So there's a few different, well, the notes column is cut off. I do apologize again. But there's a few different in the actual spreadsheet, which I'm sure you'll be able to see the report, columns that mention the Village of Millbrook as VOM. And it's basically the opportunity to work on actions together, but you submit separately. So the town and Village of New Paltz is a great example of that. They have a joint task force. They work together on most projects, but they just submit for points separately. So as long as you can prove that you were involved in the process, which I'm sure will be very easy because you work with them, that you can get the same kind of points that the Village of Millbrook is applying for. So that's a really good opportunity as well, because I think oftentimes, task force members are already a little overworked, so combining 2 task forces will be really, really good. And then the last part of this is just making sure that you have at least one action completed in 4 different pledge elements, which they've done, and they went above and beyond and did it across 6 different pledge elements. Next slide. So that's the final report, and I'll actually also be sending this out so that it can be shared, on the website as well if you'd like, or if you'd like to email it to anyone who attended, because this one is not the best version of it. But the report includes all of the recommended actions that we went through with the community and some in-depth information about the current situation and, how it applies to actions moving forward and how to complete in progress actions. And then it also has, like I mentioned, the recommended timelines for each action. In the actual spreadsheet that we created, we've also tried to color code to show a difference between any actions that are related to policy and resolutions. So you can easily do that. It's kind of the low-hanging fruit there. And so those are also kind of put in that report. And I think that's it. You can go to the next slide. I feel like everyone has been asking questions, but feel free to, keep asking questions. I'm happy to answer. And the last one is just a big thank you to the CIC. You guys were incredible to work with. It's been, make this process a lot easier when we have a passionate task force and CIC working on this project. And, oftentimes it can take a lot longer than this. So I feel like this was a fantastic opportunity for me as well. So thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yes.
And Cornell and supporting us in this work. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
everything you've done. And this is a lot for us to consider and chew on and think about how we can best move forward.
Yeah, definitely. And another
it'd be
plug.
great too, if we could get your presentation.
Of
I think
course.
actually maybe you did send it to me and to Margaret, and so
Mhm.
we could share, I could share it with the board, the slides, and we can read it
Yeah.
carefully and for everyone that's here and the public to see.
Mm-hmm. And one last mention is that Cornell also helps with submission when you guys are very close to, submitting for bronze certification, and I would likely be the person that would be assigned to you for submission. So please feel free to reach out to us for that as well. But again, thank you so much, and I'll give all of this, the updated versions of this to Leslie and Margaret so they can send it out and share it.
Thank you very much.
Great,
One more
thank you.
thing, I think we're planning on getting the bronze submission by June of next year, right?
Yeah, that would be
That would be the
I think we
timeline.
can have bronze, I mean, we were really there, there's just one thing that we didn't have.
Well,
There's a
let's
training
finish
that's coming
documenting.
up that I think I can attend, and
Yeah.
if I attend that training, I think we get the points that we need to
Yeah.
get us across the
And I think we
threshold.
have enough points if we get the council.
Yeah,
The village's points.
yes, yeah, 100%. It's like playing a video game,
Mhm.
or a game, where we're trying to
But we
get our
have to make
points.
the document submission, so
Yeah,
that's.
That's the big step, yeah, which we'll do. Richard and Margaret and I, and all this, the CSC, which has been so helpful in putting all this together. And then that's, now that we have our direction, we can, talk through, next steps and prioritizing those actions.
Yeah, and always make sure to go back to the website to make sure an action is still up to date, because obviously that spreadsheet does not change with the website. So just moving forward, make sure to do that. But thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank
Thank you so much, Jillian, thank you.
Website for the, yes,
Is it on our town website?
Joe, did you want to give us your report?
Sure. We're blacktopping next week. Monday's off, apparently today we got that call. So Tuesday, Wednesday, possibly Thursday. I don't do it on Fridays. Towns full of trailers, mowers. A lot of congestion on the road. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we're doing Nagall Road first, the north side, after the Sunpike. The other side's already been done, and we're doing Wing Road. This next year, we're looking at possibilities from South Road, the Tyrells, and Stanford. So hopefully they'll roll over the CHIPS funding, and we'll have enough to complete a couple of large projects. Hiring, we've interviewed 2 so far. We've only had 2 applications for over a month. But so I may be making a decision on that next week. I'll let you know. Your survey for Killorn Road, which was supposed to be completed on May 15th, is not completed. I've heard software, I've heard personnel, I think I've heard enough. What I'd like to do is to have the Colliers look at this and take a good look at it and see what's missing, what's not completed, and advise us as to how to proceed, since they're basically overseeing that project anyway. And all that documentation is to go to them. I've sent what I have. They made some notes. One of the engineers from Colliers is on leave until, sick leave until Monday. So if you don't mind, I'll send it up to them and see what it's all about.
Okay, so we've had nothing but excuses from the other.
Well, no, we've had some stuff done. The wetlands is complete, some of the stuff is completed, but 2 months, it can be nice for a while.
Yeah.
So.
Sure.
How has the road been holding up with the rain?
Better than a couple others.
Hmm.
Lost 100 feet of Woods Hollow.
What do you mean?
I have-
At the bottom of
Here you
it,
go, Walsh.
washed that
No, it
out?
wasn't at the bottom. It was from about, I'm going to say, I won't use days, 144 to 206. What's going on?
Right there.
But we opened it up within 24 hours. We built it, and now we've stabilized it. And we put some more drainage in, and actually, I think I mentioned this the last meeting. I'm working with 2 homeowners at the top of the hill, where water actually runs from their hills that they live on, comes down and takes off in the drains, and the drains just can't take it. So we're going to try to make something there, create something there, pipe another couple pipes across the road into open fields with another neighbor's help, and try to mitigate it once and for all. It's just been going on forever. You start crossing fingers when you see these rains.
I'll share with you what Joe told me about Killorn Road. It's very interesting, and he deserves a real pat on the back. When we had all that heavy rain, most people would go hide inside. Well, he got in his truck and drove out there, sat in his truck, and watched where the water was coming out of. And he found the drain that wasn't working properly, fixed it, and it's working perfectly.
It hasn't washed a particular couple of driveways out in 2 years.
That's great.
Yep.
So that's not the end of the Killorn
Right.
project, obviously, but
But that's pretty
It's a big
promising.
help,
That
though.
means a lot of the drainage work that you've done is working.
this took about an hour. It was figuring it out.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, storms. So the July 9 through 10 storm, we have already, I think we got it the first day after the presentation. We've already got our request for public assistance into FEMA. And we'll be working on that for a few months anyway. We usually, we apply, our applications are usually what's considered a small. I think it's over 100,000 is a large. I've never had one that large. So we try to get them, I don't know that they pay them out quicker. I think the idea is that it takes less time and there's less red tape. So I'm anticipating about $30,000 to $40,000. Not bad. I'm anticipating that's what we probably have spent on a couple of these roads. So let's see if we can get some money back.
And you told me that we haven't heard anything yet on that Oak Summit project, have we?
No, and I don't think we will for a while. There'll be, I've had calls from neighbors, very nice. They and I'm gonna try to, obviously I'll be communicating to you anything that I hear. If there's a design that goes on prior to anything, and we might want to be sort of involved in that too. I mean, if it's there, why not?
Yep.
If it doesn't cost us a lot, instead of some only steel looking thing, maybe we can do something nice. Don't know. See how it goes. It's my first one, really. And also I have to take out the other culvert, but we'll do that work. There's another one on that road. I'm going to do it prior to this one.
Mhm.
So that, because that road has to be blacktop. So, we're shaving off blacktop at this point. But.
It's gonna be interesting how that all plays out, trying to keep that road open.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure that that's part, I think what they did say is that they may try to keep that open, use the existing thing.
Mhm.
And if their design comes within, I'm assuming, the monies that we're getting, and not turn it, but go on the side of it.
Yeah.
And come back out and redo that entrance onto Candy.
Mhm.
Maybe we can keep it open.
Yeah.
Maybe we can't. We'll see. That'll be up to them. But I'm sure they'll be coming to us and presenting a couple of different options.
Right.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, John. And the other truck is on order.
It is. It's will be here end of September. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
And the body by November, December.
Got it.
We're real good price.
Yeah. Yeah. You were telling me it is a good price.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks, Joe.
All right.
James isn't here. Huh? Scheduled to be here? And Lisa's report, do we have those?
Did get James' report
Right.
by email, but I don't have a copy.
Okay.
I have a copy of James and a copy of Lisa.
Okay.
Is that Lisa? James.
Okay, the assessor's report. There's a finishing up sales review for the 2024 roll year. Despite limited inventory, there were a lot of sales again over the past year, and many private and not on MLS. Contractor is starting this week to assist Michael with data collecting. Lisa completed online CE classes last month. Going to a fall conference in October for 3 days. And I guess Jeff, she's been in touch with you over the senior citizen exemption.
Right, I'm gonna draft a local law about that and send it to her for a review and then have it ready for this board.
Yeah,
You want me to read this? is
Yeah.
short.
yeah,
So James's building and zoning report. Month of July, 52 inspections and site visits were conducted, 15 building permits were issued, 2 building permits were renewed. At the end of July, there were 14 expired building permits. There are 9 cases of fire inspections being overdue or having failed previous inspections. 2 fire inspections or re-inspections were conducted in July. No building violation complaints were received in July. 1 complaint from June regarding a deck being built without a building permit using non-code compliant materials and techniques was resolved voluntarily after the property owner and tenant were contacted and the deck was removed. 1 emergency case regarding a chimney had been struck and damaged by lightning was responded to after notification by the Millbrook Fire Department. The damage was determined to not be so severe to require that the structure be vacated until repairs could be made. And for zoning, in the month of July, there were 3 municipal searches, no FOIL requests, 4 site visits in July, one written complaint was received in July as a follow-up to a verbal complaint about multiple unregistered vehicles present on Jameson Hill. A letter was sent to the property owner asking that the violations be addressed, as well as copies of the relevant sections of the zoning code. That's his report.
Lois, did you want to give us your report?
Sure. I noticed on my report, it says most of the monthly bank reconciliations are completed. They're all completed for this.
Okay.
I just received July, so I didn't have time to start them yet. As you know, there's about 20 of them that I have to do every month. I attached the bank balances for your information. The monthly revenue from the Justice Court has been received from Betsy Sheepline through May, and Jeff Fileson through June of 2023. The building department report has been received for July, as well as the town clerk's July report. Transfer station billing and deposits are up to date. I will be starting the budget process this month. I don't know where the time is gone. I'm going to hand out each department's revenue and expense reports and asking them to have their information, their initial information by September 19th. So I can proceed with their projections. The thing I wanted to talk about is the sale, not the sales, the mortgage tax. As Gary sends me, he receives the mortgage tax spreadsheets, and our mortgage tax now has declined. So I think the last since COVID, 2-3 years of home sales has slowed down. So I'm not sure if we're going to make our projected mortgage tax revenue this year.
We did.
Yeah. We had said that we would receive about $125,000. I'm not sure we're going to get there. I did a comparison to last April to June quarter. We received $86,982. April to June of 2022. We're going to receive $21,000 for this year's April to June quarter. So that's a decrease of $65,000. Good news is we're ahead in sales tax. So that's good. We're already exceeded our anticipation on that. And then I started.
I'm wondering if what last year, because the real estate market was booming so much
Yes.
with COVID,
Yes.
what it was kind of pre-COVID, are we
It
going
was,
back to that, or is it?
We received about $110,000 in 2019.
Okay.
So I'm not even quite sure we'll get there, but in previous years, it was around 100,000. So not quite sure we'll get there, but
That might be a good sort of, target for us of what we,
in the future.
yeah,
what we
just
do
because
for
if
next
we're
year.
level setting from,
Right.
COVID, the market was so crazy with
Right,
transactions.
right.
There's been a lot, not a lot, but there's been quite a few cash sales
Cash
Yeah.
sales
and
too.
purchases too, and that
Right,
Yeah.
just bypasses that whole process.
yeah,
Sure.
that's true too.
So,
There's just no inventory right now in the
No.
market in Washington.
Plus interest rates, people
Yeah.
are
Yeah.
second guessing whether they want to step in right now.
I started the SAMS.gov renewal process. That's always fun every year. They request documents sometimes that they're looking for a letter of incorporation. And I had to tell them we're not incorporation. We are a local town government. We don't have that piece of paper if you're a private business. The IRS gives you a letter with a starting date. So
Okay.
they said that I could find the charter from 1788. I really don't know what that is.
Yeah.
So
That's a
we'll see
trip to
where
the
this
records
goes
room, yeah.
anyway, so it'll work out. I'm in contact with them and trying to find out what papers will, again, meet their requirements, so.
Right.
Yeah, so that's always fun.
Thanks, Lois.
You're welcome.
So, Mike, you want to give Danielle?
Yes, she could not attend this evening, but she forwarded to me what her report would have been. They had the senior trip on July 22nd. It was a fabulous success. A lot of inquiries if other trips can be organized. Some suggestions made, perhaps a trip to the city for plays and so on. So very pleased with that. Good cooperation with the other senior organizations in town, and it was a sellout. They had a good time. Our camp, the last day of camp was August 4th, this past Friday already. On August 3rd, there was an ice cream social, an art show, a film presentation of what had happened during the camp season, some skits. And then that Friday morning, the following morning was the last day of camp. The lifeguards put on some competitions for the kids and so on. So again, they distributed a parent survey. They've collected it. The survey will be analyzed by the board and come up with a summary of the comments made. But the verbal comments that she's been getting, the members of the rec commission have been getting, and I've been getting, highly complimentary of the camp this year. Park updates. The last day of pool access will be on August the 20th. That is due to the inability to hold on to senior lifeguards. The senior lifeguards are very often college students, and many of the college students, starting last Tuesday, have started to go back to campus. The last college student senior guard will be leaving on the 19th or 20th. We will have junior guards available, but under county law, safety laws, you cannot have junior guards running pools or waterfronts. So the pool itself will be closed down. They'll go through a reclamation of all of the products that are there, put them in storage, and then Jonathan can initiate the draining of the pool, and then we'll get another good look at the infrastructure underneath it. The park will not be closed to pavilion rentals or uses by other community organizations that wish to make use of it by contacting Danielle. Upgrade to park building. Ed Lodi, during one of our meetings, was approved to be the architect engineer oversight for some of the improvements that are going to be occurring to the main building. We're looking to make that 12-month a year accessible, heating, air conditioning, water. Ed has developed some plans that James took a look at. Some things needed to be tweaked. Bobby and Danielle and Jonathan and Ed and associates of Ed did a walkthrough. They visualized where the comments were on the initial plan. The revision will take place and be resubmitted, and then we'll start working towards that.
The revision will be ready tomorrow.
Correct. There will be a new toddler program. Many of you may not know, but Danielle, over the last multiple years, has been running a daycare center here in the village. When she accepted the position of Director of Recreation, we agreed with her that she would allow the program to continue during her to complete her first year. The program has been completed as of this past June. That program has been shut down, and the Rec Commission has assumed that into their program. So the toddler program will be available because the building will not be immediately available in September. It will continue at the Lyle facility. We will be renting the facility for a period of time till we get the okay to move the program up to the building at Mavisville. But that's the toddler program. There will be a coordinator hired for that will work with Danielle and be under Danielle's supervision. That individual has worked with Danielle the last couple of years and is very, very, very familiar with the child's program. Fall soccer registration is open. 41 registered for regular soccer currently, and 7 for the kindergarten soccer program. Holiday programs. Danielle took the opportunity the last day of camp to hand out a good number of flyers to all the parents picking up the kids, announcing that on October 28th, there will be a new Halloween program added to the trunk and treat up at the town park. There will be a holiday parade around the upper field. and then come down to the trunk or treat, decorative prizes and costume prizes and so on. So that flyer was handed out, as was a flyer on, hard to believe, but on December 8th, the Gingerbread House and Santa will meet and greet. Already talking about December. So she's, just like the fashion industry, she's always working seasons ahead. So she's right on top of everything. And I have to
Very good.
mention that she's been terrific. She's been terrific, putting in a lot of hours, but also just getting everything coordinated. The staff this year at camp was phenomenal. The art director, the waterfront people, the swim lessons, the first aid people, the counselors in training. It was very, very good. We've also, just to add to this, Jonathan Alonga, who's the overseer of the grounds, Danielle, Bobby, and I did a walk around to visualize a kind of a long-range plan for what the recreation site should look like in the future. We identified some current problems that need to be rectified, some dead trees, some of the outdoor barbecue cement fixtures are aged, need to be replaced. Some trees need to be pruned. The road needs to be blacktopped coming in. So, and programs, we started talking about programs and the use of the fields that are up there, making some improvements to the basketball court. They've already redone one of the shuffleboard courts into a cornhole court. So people that are using the pavilions have that availability. But we want to get a vision of what that should look like in the future. She's already been approached for perhaps 2 people, businesses interested in running a concession stand next year. So if we expand some of the in-season programs on the grounds, that could be a part of an incentive for people to go up and partake of other areas. They're improving the sand volleyball area. So we started talking about maybe a beach volleyball league, the cornhole, perhaps pickleball courts, perhaps some expansion of the upper fields and looking at those types of things. So I worked with them and said, put together a 5-year plan, maybe a 10-year plan, and an immediate plan. Prioritize them, get the cost, start to present that to the board so we get an overall vision of what's needed up there so that we can either look for grants or perhaps working with other board members, maybe having a capital campaign to improve the facility up there or initiate new programs up there, similar to what Stanford has done with their initiatives and other parks have done. So that's in the works. That's not official, but we're doing the groundwork for that right now. So that's the report.
Good. Thanks, Mike. Chrissy, did you have a report?
Sure,
Mary's report?
yeah.
Your report.
Okay, so for the month of July, we issued 1 marriage license, 5 new dog licenses, 40 renewal licenses, 2 purebred renewal licenses, 3 death certificates, 9 hunting and fishing licenses. Mary right now is working remotely on several projects. And on August 17th, Kristen, Natalie, and myself, we are going to go to a tax collector receiver training program that Dutchess County is giving through their Department of Finance. So that will help us
Right.
for sure with tax season.
Yep.
And then also on September 12th, Kristen and I will be attending a records management and town clerk responsibility training in LaGrange. So that will also help. And as for the website, it is live right now. However, it's a rough draft, and Natalie is constantly revising it and working on it. And we're happy to take any suggestions or ideas regarding the site, what we could do to make it easier. And
It's beautiful. It's very exciting to see it. It's love when I saw it today.
that's what we have.
Good, thank you. Mike,
Yes, my report. You'll recall that a month ago, we had a special meeting where we submitted our initial draft of a proposed local law on short-term rentals, which stimulated an opportunity for public input. We got written input, we had verbal input at that following special meeting and brought that back to the committee. We reviewed all of the comments from planning, from CAC, from the public, both verbal and written. And we did find that there were sections of the proposed law that we submitted that needed to be changed. That means that by doing so, you're basically recreating a new document. So that triggers a resubmission of that document to the board and then a rescheduling of another public hearing. We had hoped to do it tonight, but because of some conflicts of schedules, we were unable to have that new draft ready. We are hoping to have a special meeting within the next couple of weeks at which that document will be presented, and that will stimulate the following, perhaps, September board meeting. We will have the public hearing on that. That's all a timing factor. So this evening, we don't have anything to submit. Oh, I do want to add something to that. At that public hearing, our local legislator was able to tell us that the county has an agreement with the Granicus Corporation. I explained who they were at the meeting. For reimbursement of dollars that will be spent with them to bring them on board to help administer the local law. And we reached out to the county. The county gave us the directions on how to retrieve those documents and the process to follow. It's one of these typical government programs. We will pay the money up front. Granicus will give us a voucher. We will submit the voucher to the county. We will get reimbursed. And we can contract up to $5,000 with Granicus. And that will be the target that we had initially set, was up to $5,000. And Bobby and I, Richard on the committee, had seen a lengthy presentation by Granicus, and we decided which module we wanted to purchase. So we had that document in hand, and as soon as the law gets passed and we agree to hire Granicus, then that reimbursement process will begin. And, Granicus I just talked about, and the long-term projects that recreation already talked about.
Super. Thanks. Bob.
Yep.
When will we see the document? Will it be on the website, the one that you're putting together?
Just like we did last time, right, Jeff? Once it's
Right, I still need to put it together.
And then once we get it, we post it.
Have it, it'll get posted on the
Right.
website.
Okay.
There weren't a lot of changes, but there were some, especially Jan had brought up the legalese paragraph at the end of it. We took a serious look at that. We rewrote that so it's more customer friendly.
Mike, what about building code revisions suggested by the planning board? Is that anything?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
I met with two members of the planning board. Remember, all of us got from Leslie, we picked certain comments that were made from planning to look at. And I had met with Emily and with Susan, and they are rewriting certain sections. They're working on it now, and they'll get it to me, and then we'll get it to you guys. Not big things, just kind of, again, wordsmithing, so it's a little clearer, particularly for applicants coming forward. Just make the system, process a little bit easier.
Okay, so just a little more on recreation that maybe Mike didn't know about or whatever, but we've been thinking about an alternate access to the park. We only have one access in and out on Route 44. So I did some research, got some county maps and some of that stuff, and we do have access to Little Rest Road between the horse farm and the last house on the left before the horse farm. Looks like it's a considerable right of way. I did speak to the homeowner of the house today, had a nice conversation with her and told her that once we clear the brush a little bit so we could see what we have there, because you can't even get through there, it's all overgrown, that I would keep in touch with her, and I will get a hold of the farm owner, just to let them know that it's our intention to have a gated entrance at that end for emergencies and for caretaker use, because it's a little bit of a shortcut to the park, and during camp, we don't have to disrupt any camp kids and the entrance, because we keep the gate closed during camp, so people don't come in and out. So that's something we'll work on probably after the park is closed. And Joe Spagnola, our highway guy, said he would work with Lou Spagnola, and the water line from the well to the camp building is probably 80, 90 years old. So Joe is going to excavate it so we can take a look, see what it is, if it was ever replaced, how deep it is, because now we're not going to drain that line.
Right.
We're going to keep water and we don't want it to freeze, of course. So Joe agreed to work with his Uncle Lou and get that accomplished. And then the only other thing we have to do is put a small heater in where the water tank is in the concession building, and we'd be ready to go. So that, and maybe Gary could. I wasn't here for the ribbon cutting for the charging stations, but that's all done. So maybe you could just tell people about that.
Oh, yeah, it was,
Tourism, Dutchess County Tourism was
Oh, that's
there.
great.
Judith was there.
Yeah.
Vicky Contino from the village.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name from Dutchess County Tourism. She was there. Myself and the lady from the
Livingston
Livingston Energy.
All right.
And we had a little ribbon cutting, took some nice pictures, which I assume will be put on the website.
Yeah,
It was nice.
yeah, and the village is reviewing a couple of, small signs that could be, we don't want to put any big signs up. And it's already on the electric owner sites, Plug Share and all those, so people will know where they're at 10 Reservoir Drive. That's about it.
So they're operational now.
Oh, yeah,
Has been used.
Oh, yeah, somebody's-
Has been used.
Somebody's been,
Excellent.
it's been used a few times already.
Early evening, our neighbors observed a truck that was plugged in.
It's great.
I guess there's an app you put on your
Yeah.
phone.
Yeah.
And that's how you use
It
it.
tells you right on the machine, or you could do it online, you could look online
Right.
beforehand.
Yeah, it's pretty.
You just
neat.
put your credit card in there,
No
it's
credit card.
electricity.
No credit
No,
card.
no, I mean, you have to have your credit card on
On the app.
the app.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
But there was no cost to the taxpayers except for the parking spaces themselves. There was no cost at all. And we will not generate any revenue from those because it's going to be very minimal for quite a few years anyway. But those things cost like, that project was like, according to Livingston Energy, like $32,000. So we didn't pay 1 penny except for the parking spaces, in which we also can use during meeting nights and stuff. It's not going to be closed off just for electric vehicles. So Richard, you could park a car over there.
And, yeah, and Buffy was there too. I forgot to mention Buffy. She's the president of the NBA. So
Right.
She was there as well.
I couldn't make it. So.
That was board.
Oh, thank you,
All
Gary.
right.
So at our meeting in July, the board approved referring a draft of the hospitality overlay proposed draft of the local law to both the planning board and the CAC. We received letters, I should say a letter from the CAC earlier this week, and we received comments to the draft from the planning board. Both of those have been sent to Nan Stoltenberg, who is our consultant. I've spoken with Nan. Nan is going to get back to us, the board, with her comments. She, in just reviewing it briefly found many comments helpful. Others she had some other feedback on. So she's going to get that to us, and we can consider, both their comments and her response to the comments from those two boards. I think we should probably have a special meeting to do that in the next couple of weeks. Maybe we can have that coincide with our short-term rental. I think the next step is once we get a draft that we're all comfortable with, that we would then refer it to county to get their comments. So we're not quite at a public hearing stage yet, but we're, moving along on that.
Yep.
The planning board did not meet this month. They didn't have anything before then, but they did meet internally to provide comments on the hospitality overlay. CAC did meet, and they primarily used the time to discuss the overlay and the drafting of that letter. The Climate Smart Communities Task Force, the Climate Smart Communities group, the larger task force, and then the task force that's working with Jillian from Cornell, met last week. Margaret and I met with Jillian several times to get prepared for her presentation tonight, which I thought was really helpful.
Really good.
And thank you to Margaret for all of her leadership on that, and Richard Phillips. And to the CSC, we have Adelaide Camillo and Colleen Howland, who are also in the CSC, who are here tonight. So thank you to both of them, too, for their efforts and time. The natural resources inventory is plugging along. The group working with the village had a information booth at the farmers market July 15th, I think.
Yeah.
Richard, you were there. Adelaide, you might have been there. Maybe you were there for the June one. Colleen was there. Who else was there? I wasn't there, obviously, because I'm asking you who
Margaret
was.
was there to set up and take their part.
Okay, great. And you had a lot of people
And
come.
Elizabeth was there.
Right, and so there were,
Elizabeth Bellin.
right, and there were maps
Yeah, we
and,
had about 20 or 30 people come and ask questions. It was great.
And share their information.
Yeah.
that's great. Oh, that's great, because we do need more people to be involved in the work.
It was raining in June, we had less people, but people were really enthusiastic.
Yeah.
And there's just like, everybody's so positive about it.
That's great. That's really great. And so really the goal of that is to just let the community know what the town is doing. Part of what the DEC wants us to do, it's part of the work that Cornell's doing with us. And with this joint NRI, part of their technical support is telling us that we need to be educating the public about what a natural resources inventory is and what process the town and village and Clinton are going through. And then in September, we'll have a special meeting to review the draft natural resources inventory with the town board, the CAC, and the planning board, just for feedback. Oh, and the CSC task force also is included in that. And then the idea is we'll take everybody's feedback and comments, and then there would be some sort of a public education or kind of public reveal at the community day in October. And that's all I have,
Wow.
believe it or not.
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Okay, so we're at the public comment section of the meeting. Does anybody have any comment? Questions?
I'm going to excitement that town park. I mean, I'm missing a lot.
Well, that's kind of a hidden gem up there.
It really is.
And
And it looks terrific.
it's never looked as good as it has right now. I don't think. And we're very fortunate, so.
We certainly had enough water this year.
Yeah.
Actually, we had some major, not damaging flooding, but the spillway. And if you've been up there and you drive in where the gate is, that spillway to the left is usually a nice little cascading waterfalls. Several of the storms within the last month, it literally went around it, went over the I-beams, came down from the road into that, and then the stream itself, outside the fence, was at the base of the fence to the base of the trees, shooting down towards Ruby's. And that's how much rain we got. In one instance, it was 3.5 hours of rain, and that just spilled over completely. Plus, the upper reservoir itself went over its banks, came down underneath the evergreen trees across the road near the lifeguard booth and into the pond. Last year, we were going to be closing the town pool earlier than even the lifeguards going back to college because the water had dropped 2.5 feet in the pool.
Yeah.
So this year, we
Just
don't have that problem. And the water's been completely clean. You can see out into the water, no vegetation growing. It's been really well done, and that's because we've got people paying attention to it.
We had our new caretaker up there
Yeah.
did a heck of a job getting it ready.
Yeah.
Next time you go up there, you too, Bob, take a look at the wall, the concrete wall where the water comes out of that little pond. I mean, the wall, number one, it's starting to cave a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
Which wall are you talking about?
You know where it comes out
dams?
of the pond, the dam.
Oh, the dam.
Yeah.
We've had that looked at in the last 10 years. The concrete specialist looked at it and he's the one who put the beams across
Right.
to make sure that they don't
Yeah,
collapse.
yeah.
And he said that dam is in pretty darn good shape because the DEC commented about it 10 years ago. And we pointed it up a little bit. And when it gets real high, there is a seam
Yeah.
that water comes through a little bit when there's extreme amount of pressure,
Mhm.
but it's not degrading. So, but we will keep an eye on it.
Yeah, it looks a little
Yeah.
strange. Okay, anybody have anything? If not, we have a personnel issue we need to talk about in executive session. Politely excuse everybody.
Bye. Thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Yes, yes,
Thanks, Richard.
Richard, MVP.
Thanks.
You are.
Thanks, Judith.
See you, Judith.
And I apologize.
See you, Howard.